What's up everybody, Boone here from PremiumBeat.com. So Adobe's latest release of Premiere Pro introduces the new Essential Graphics panel, an entirely new workflow for graphics in Premiere Pro. Now while we could go over all the new features of the Essential Graphics panel, I want to touch on some design principles. In particular, I want to go over 6 simple tips you can use to make your text pop in Premiere Pro. One of the quickest and easiest ways to make your text stand out in Premiere Pro is to adjust your elements that you have in the background. So we have a shot here, a close-up of a backlit keyboard, and we have a title graphic which says keyboard. And a lot of our attention is being drawn to the actual keyboard because we can see it's in sharp focus here. So one of the quick ways we can adjust this and make this text pop out is to add a blur effect to our video layer here. And if you look at the layers here, the top layer we have our text, the bottom layer is our video layer. So think of this just as like when you're shooting an interview and you want to make your interview subject pop out, what do? You control your depth of field and you create a shallow depth of field to make your background blurry. And when you have your interview subject in focus, and in this instance the interview subject would be our text, we would use our depth of field to blur out the background. So this is kind of the same thing that we're going to try to do here in theory. It's just simply blur out the background to bring attention to our foreground, which in this case is our text. So all we need to do is to go to the effects panel and search for blur. And I'll quickly grab a Gaussian blur and I want to put it on my video layer, the keyboard layer here. And if you look here in the blur and sharpen folder, we have a number of different options here for the blur effects we can use. So now in the effect controls panel, I'll see my Gaussian blur here. And now watch in my program monitor what happens when I start to add the blur effect. You can see right away our text is starting to stand out. Now let's put our blur at about 50. Now right now, there we go. We'll add repeat edges. And right there, it's already looking a lot better. There's a big difference. And if you can't tell, I'm going to quickly turn off the effect and turn it back on. Another quick way to make your text stand out is to adjust the opacity of your background layer. And that's simply going to make our background layer darker. Now if you think about the example I gave you before about when you're shooting an interview and you use depth of field to control what's in focus and what is out of focus so you can blur out your background essentially, think of this as like not when you light your interview subject, if you're lighting the background and you keep the lighting on the background low. So I'm going to grab my background layer here, which is the keyboard, and open up the opacity. I'm going to lower this down and you'll see here in our program monitor it's making our text pop out even more. Can lower this down to maybe 65 and there we go. We've got a nice graphic that's popping out much better than before. If you're in a situation where you can't adjust the opacity or the blur of a background element, another way you can make your text quickly pop out is by using a stroke, which is going to help you see the edges of your text layer in different depending on where your text is placed against your background. That stroke is really going to help your viewers see the entire text and the edges. So here I have white text on a black background, and if you look here I have a white background that I have selected here, and for this example, for the stroke example, I wanted to show you this with black and white, simple black and white colors to show you what I mean. So right now if I turn on my white background, obviously our text is going to get lost. So I'm going to turn that back off, and if I add a stroke, I can simply in the Essential Graphics panel click the stroke button here as I have my text highlighted, and you can't see the stroke effect added yet because it's showing up on a black background. But if we turn our white background layer back on, there we go. There's our stroke, and we can still see the edges of our text layer, and our text stands out. Another great way to draw attention to your graphics is to use motion. And in the new Essential Graphics panel, Adobe Premiere Pro now offers up motion graphics templates. So if you go here under the Browse tab of the Essential Graphics panel, you can see a little library of effects here. And I can scroll down, and let's say we want to put a title graphic up over this shot. This is a shot of a foggy beach in France. So we want to put a title graphic up over it that has a little bit of motion. So I can double click on titles. We have a few different templates here. Now all I need to do is grab one. Let's say I want this one. I can grab this and drag it over, and it's going to create a graphic layer, and it's going to load. And now all I need to do is drag this back here to match with our clip, and let's have a look here. Okay, so we have two little titles come up, and all I need to do is select this, and then with my type tool, select the layer, and then enter my text in. And then I can get rid of the episode name. I don't really need that. And then I can make adjustments to the box here. And now I have a really fast animation in that I barely had any time creating that, and that's what's great about these templates. And if I want even more motion, I can go into the Effect Controls panel and add a simple scale animation. So I can have this maybe scale up by 15 pixels over the course of the shot. So I'm going to change it from 85 pixels, and it's going to scale all the way up to full 100. So let's have a look now. I'm going to full screen this. And there we go. Now we have some simple, smooth motion graphics. It's going to help draw attention to that little title. As simple as it may sound, position plays a big role in making your text visible or making it blend into your background. So let's say, once again, I have a clip here and I want to add a quick little location title, and I don't want to blur or change the opacity of my background. I just want the text on top of the video. So if we're using some simple white text, I can have my type tool here, and let's type in the name of the city, Edinburgh, Scotland. And now what the position has to do with this is if we move this throughout our screen here on different locations on our screen, it's going to look better in certain areas depending on the contrast of the white against the dark elements of our screen. So the darkest parts of our screen are obviously this building here. Down at the bottom it's nice and dark, and over here we have some pretty dark areas. We're not going to want to put our white text up here or down here because of that white sky there is kind of blown out, and over here against the building it doesn't look the best. So we can position this properly. Down here on the building really pops out. We can have it down here as a lower third. We could have it up here, it pops out, or down here, anywhere along the bottom essentially. I'm going to put it right here. And now we can align this. And there we go. Now we can have a quick little transition here. Let's take a look. There we go. With positioning, our text works great on this shot. Let's say all the tips I've given you to this point are not working, and you don't want to adjust the opacity or the blur of your background. You don't want to add a stroke. The positioning isn't working. You can't find a proper position. So one of the last simple and down and dirty quick things you can do is add a shape layer to your text element and add it in the background to make it stand out. So we have here an interview with an artist. We have his name and the subtitle that we've created here, but let's say it's just we can't find a location that we want it to be here, but it blends in too much. We want it to pop a bit more off of this this collage artwork in the background. So what we can do in the Essential Graphics panel, we can go to the New Layer button and select Rectangle, and that's going to create a rectangle here. Now all we need to do is position this rectangle to fit roughly with the size of our text. And then in the new Essential Graphics panel, layering is just as it is anywhere else, and we can actually move this down, set it behind. And if you're happy with that, you can keep it, but I'll like to lower the opacity just a bit. So if I select my shape layer, I can go over here and grab the opacity, lower the opacity just a bit, maybe to 60, and there we go. And you can obviously use different colors, different opacity levels for this, and that can quickly make your graphics pop out. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and be sure to check out PremiumBeat for high quality, royalty-free music and sound effects for all of your media and video projects.